Lord Zargathor Bureaucratius IV prided himself on running the most efficient, well-oiled bureaucratic machine in the known universe. The Galactic Bureau of Supreme Management, GBSM, had spent centuries perfecting the art of paperwork warfare, crushing civilizations under the sheer weight of compliance forms and regulatory subcommittees. So when a routine planetary audit flagged Earth as a Class 5 non-compliant nuisance, he did what any self-respecting intergalactic overlord would do, scheduled its immediate destruction. "This should be easy," he muttered, signing the execution order with his ceremonial pen, which, by law, required 17 signatures and a notarized blessing from the High Council of Paperclip Allocations. The council chamber buzzed with approval. Vice Chairman Plorb, a being whose only discernible skill was filling out forms in triplicate, leaned forward eagerly. "Shall I initiate the requisite invasion paperwork packet 42B, sir?" Yes, get it done," Zargathor waved him off. "Humans are primitive. They'll either surrender immediately or waste the next few decades debating which font to use for their official protests." The execution order was promptly filed, stamped, copied, misfiled, found again, stamped twice for redundancy, and ultimately lost in the system for 3 months. Meanwhile on Earth, Admiral Jack Paperwork. O'Connor sipped his coffee with the satisfied smirk of a man who had just out-bureaucratized an intergalactic empire. The warning of Earth's impending doom had been intercepted weeks ago, but instead of panicking, the U.S. military had done what it did best, found the loophole. "I want an update," O'Connor barked. "Lieutenant Logan, red tape." Rodriguez grinned. "Operation Paperwork Overload is a go, sir. We've already reclassified Earth as a protected religious heritage site. Turns out the Galactic Bureau has a strict policy against destroying places of cultural significance." O'Connor nodded. "Good. That'll buy us time. About their invasion budget?" Rodriguez chuckled. "Completely reallocated. As of this morning, it's been transferred into a charitable fund for endangered space whales. They won't see a single credit until they complete 4,000 compliance reviews." O'Connor leaned back in his chair, impressed. "And the Navy SEALs?" "Private First Class. Kyle, IT support." Davis snorted. "Sir, SEAL Team 7 hacked their central database and replaced every single invasion order with employee wellness. Retreat invitations. The entire Galactic Armada thinks they're required to attend a 2-week mindfulness seminar before engaging in combat." O'Connor grinned. "Beautiful." Back on Zargathor's homeworld, the Supreme Director was having a very bad day. "I don't understand," he muttered, staring at the report from the Compliance Division. "Why hasn't Earth been destroyed?" Vice Chairman Plorb looked nervous. "Well, sir, it seems Earth has counterfiled." "Counterfiled?" Zargathor's voice grew dangerously shrill. "Yes, sir. They've buried us in so much regulatory paperwork that our own invasion has been, temporarily suspended." Zargathor's eye twitched. "Temporarily suspended?" Plorb nodded, sweating profusely. "According to Galactic Code 742Z, we can't attack a planet that has been designated a protected religious heritage site without first submitting an environmental impact report. The estimated processing time is, 50 years. Zargathor's claws dug into the armrests of his chair. "Find a way around it." "We tried, sir," Plorb whimpered. "But every time we override a regulation, the humans submit a new counter-amendment. And now, it appears they've accidentally, deliberately, cut our military budget." Zargathor's breath came out in sharp, ragged bursts. "How?" Plorb swallowed hard. "They submitted a request for additional fleet funding under Form 19B7, then nullified it using Subclause 42LL, which they then cited in a separate, seemingly unrelated report that, sir, it appears they've legally funneled all our war funds into an intergalactic pet adoption program." Zargathor stared at him. "Our invasion budget has been converted into grant money for orphaned space hamsters." Silence. Then, very softly, Zargathor whispered, "They must be stopped. Unfortunately for Zargathor, the humans were just getting started. As the Galactic Bureau scrambled to untangle its own bureaucratic mess, Navy SEAL teams infiltrated enemy spaceports with their own unique brand of psychological warfare. "Sir," one of Zargathor's officers reported, panic in his voice, "there's something wrong with the fleet." Zargathor groaned. "What now? Our ships? They won't launch. Why?" The officer hesitated. "It appears that, someone has installed a mandatory pop-up window that says, 'Are you sure you want to start a war? Click yes.' Or no." Zargathor's claws scraped against his desk. "So click yes." "We tried, sir, but the button moves every time we hover over it." Zargathor let out an unholy scream. "And that's not all, sir," the officer continued hesitantly. "Our weapons systems are malfunctioning." "How?" "Well, it seems the targeting software has been replaced with a conflict resolution program. Instead of firing at enemy ships, it now auto-corrects to friendly fist bumps." Zargathor slumped into his chair, his head in his hands. "We're being defeated by paperwork." Vice Chairman Plorb cleared his throat. "Technically, sir, we're being defeated by superior regulatory strategy." Zargathor's eye twitched again. This was war, and the humans were winning. The Supreme Director of Galactic Affairs, Lord Zargathor Bureaucratius IV, did not handle setbacks well. In his mind, the entire universe was supposed to function like a well-regulated, efficiency-maximized spreadsheet. Every species should know its place, every process should be properly documented, and every planetary extermination order should proceed without unnecessary delays. Instead, the humans, these insufferable, chaotic creatures, had managed to turn the Galactic Bureau of Supreme Management's own bureaucracy against itself. It was unthinkable. It was unacceptable. It was also giving him heartburn. Zargathor massaged his temples as Vice Chairman Plorb handed him yet another stack of urgent reports. "Sir," Plorb said, trembling slightly, "I regret to inform you that the humans have escalated their countermeasures." Zargathor exhaled sharply. "What now? Have they sent us another pile of legalese nonsense? Another procedural amendment that will take decades to review?" Plorb swallowed hard. Yes, but also, they've reclassified our war fleet as a non-profit organization." Zargathor blinked. What?" Plorb nodded rapidly. "As of this morning, the Galactic Bureau's entire military branch has been legally redefined as a non-profit charity dedicated to interstellar peacekeeping and intergalactic cultural exchange. We can't use our warships for offensive actions anymore." Zargathor stared at him in silence for a long moment. Then, very carefully, he said, "Vice Chairman Plorb, are you telling me that my entire armada is now a glorified tourism program?" Plorb nodded weakly. "Yes, sir, and all our officers are now required to complete 200 hours of diversity and inclusion training before being allowed to operate their ships." Zargathor's left eye twitched so hard that Plorb took a cautious step back. "This is an act of war," Zargathor growled through gritted teeth. Plorb coughed. "Technically, sir, according to the latest galactic bylaws, it's an act of compliance," Zargathor screamed. Meanwhile, on Earth, Admiral Jack Paperwork O'Connor leaned back in his chair, savoring the latest victory. Across the war room, Lieutenant Logan Red Tape Rodriguez was grinning as he tapped through the Galactic Bureau's latest desperate attempts to override humanity's legal maneuvers. "They keep trying to push a counter-legislation package through their High Council," Rodriguez said, shaking his head. "But every time they do, our Pentagon lawyers file an appeal on procedural grounds," O'Connor chuckled. "And how long does each appeal take to process?" Rodriguez smirked. "About 6 years. O'Connor took a sip of coffee. "Beautiful. Private." First Class Kyle IT Support Davis was typing furiously on his laptop, a look of pure mischief on his face. "I just finished Phase 2 of Operation Paperwork Overload," he announced. "We've officially classified their Supreme Director as an unpaid intern." O'Connor nearly choked on his coffee. "What?" Davis grinned. Yup. I found a loophole in their employment laws and reclassified his position as a junior-level compliance administrator trainee. As of this morning, his salary has been reduced to 0, and he is now legally required to submit weekly performance reviews to his immediate supervisor. Rodriguez frowned. Wait, who's his supervisor? Davis snorted. Some intern in their lower filing department. His name is Blorbo. He's been working at the Bureau for like 800 years, but never got promoted. Rodriguez burst out laughing. So the most powerful man in their empire has to report to Blorbo the filing clerk? Yup. And Blorbo already sent him an email demanding an updated resume and a 2-page essay on what efficiency means. To me, O'Connor grinned. Outstanding work, Davis. Absolutely outstanding. Davis wasn't done. Also, I may or may not have hacked their fleet's navigation systems. All their warships are currently rerouting to attend a mandatory workplace safety seminar. Rodriguez whistled. Damn, you're ruthless. Hey, Davis shrugged. I just really hate inefficiency. O'Connor shook his head in admiration. All right, let's keep up the pressure. What's next? Rodriguez smirked. We start Phase 3. Back at the Galactic Bureau, Zargathor sat in the dark, staring blankly at his desk. His empire was collapsing under the weight of its own regulations. His warships were stuck in bureaucratic limbo. His officers were spending more time filling out compliance forms than preparing for battle, and worst of all, he had just received a passive-aggressive email from Blorbo the filing clerk, reminding him to submit his weekly performance review. This is hell, Zargathor muttered. A beep from his desk console broke the silence. He pressed the button, and an automated message began playing. Attention, esteemed leaders of the Galactic Bureau of Supreme Management. You have received an urgent PowerPoint presentation from Earth. Title, So You've Just Realized You're Not the Most Advanced Civilization, a Step-by-Step Recovery Guide. Zargathor felt his stomach drop. The screen lit up, and the first slide appeared. It was a picture of the Earth flag. Below it, in bright, bold letters, were the words, You're screwed. In Comic Sans, Zargathor clenched his fists as the automated voice continued. Slide 1. Recognizing your mistakes. The first step to overcoming your bureaucratic downfall is accepting that you've been outmaneuvered by a civilization that has both Navy SEALs and an army of unpaid interns with internet access. Zargathor slammed his fist against the console, but the presentation continued. Slide 2. The importance of flexibility. Did you know that an overly rigid bureaucratic system is vulnerable to targeted procedural sabotage? Here's a helpful infographic of exactly how we ruined your military budget. Zargathor's breathing grew ragged as he stared at the animated pie chart detailing his empire's financial downfall. The voice droned on. Slide 3. Next steps. At this point, you have 2 options. 1. Surrender immediately and allow humanity to restructure your government in exchange for a lucrative consulting contract. 2. Continue resisting and endure several more years of agonizing bureaucratic warfare, which will inevitably result in the collapse of your entire civilization. The voice paused for effect. Please select your response. A. We surrender, or B. We refuse and will continue to suffer. Zargathor reached for the console, trying to click B. The button moved away from his cursor. He lunged for it again. It moved further. A cold sweat broke out on his forehead. He grabbed a stylus and stabbed at the button. It dodged. Zargathor let out a long, tortured scream. Vice Chairman Plorb stood off to the side, watching nervously. Sir, maybe we should consider surrendering. Zargathor turned, eyes blazing. Plorb, we are a proud, bureaucratic empire. We do not surrender. Plorb hesitated. Well, technically, sir, according to Subclause 48X of the Galactic's Compliance Act, we can submit a conditional surrender form as long as it is properly notarized. Zargathor stared at him. Plorb coughed. Just saying, sir. The Supreme Director of Galactic Affairs, Lord Zargathor Bureaucratius IV, the mighty ruler of the most bureaucratic empire in the universe, buried his face in his hands. He had a sinking feeling this war was already lost, and the worst part, he still had to file his performance review for Blorbo. Lord Zargathor Bureaucratius IV was not accustomed to defeat. He had spent his entire career drowning civilizations in regulatory sludge, toppling empires with the sheer weight of documentation and making entire species disappear under mountains of compliance paperwork. He was the master of inefficiency, the emperor of endless process loops, the galactic overlord of fine print. And now, he was losing. To humans. Not because of their military prowess, not because of their technology, not even because of their infamous stubbornness, but because they were better at bureaucracy than the Galactic Bureau of Supreme Management itself. Zargathor sat in his massive, lavishly over-decorated office, staring at the latest war report. It wasn't even a war report anymore. It was a customer satisfaction survey. His military commanders, seasoned veterans of paperwork warfare, had been forced to complete mandatory training modules on effective conflict resolution in the workplace. His dreadnought-class battlecruisers were currently stalled in deep space, unable to move until they completed a multi-step safety compliance checklist that never ended. It was worse than an invasion. It was an HR nightmare. Vice Chairman Plorb approached cautiously, clutching yet another urgent update. "Sir," he said nervously, "the situation has escalated." Zargathor rubbed his temples. "Tell me." Plorb gulped. "The humans have just filed for full corporate acquisition of the Galactic Bureau of Supreme Management." The Supreme Director's eye twitched. "They what?" Plorb nodded rapidly. "They've successfully reclassified the Bureau as a publicly traded administrative entity, and they now own 51% of our shares." Zargathor shot out of his chair. "How?" Plorb flinched. "It turns out that during all the financial chaos, a number of our pension funds were accidentally liquidated and sold on the open market. The humans' legal team, led by a particularly ruthless woman named Janet from accounting, immediately bought up the controlling interest in our government." Zargathor's jaw dropped. "Are you telling me the humans just bought our empire?" Plorb swallowed. "Legally, yes." Zargathor grabbed his desk for support. This couldn't be happening. He had fought wars. He had crushed rebellions. He had enforced Supreme Compliance Regulation 18F on planets that didn't even have writing systems, but he had never been hostilely taken over by a team of lawyers. Meanwhile, deep in a classified war bunker on Earth, Admiral Jack Paperwork, O'Connor was grinning like a man who had just won a war without firing a single shot. Lieutenant Logan Red Tape Rodriguez slapped a thick folder onto the table. "The acquisition is complete, sir. The Galactic Bureau is officially under human management. Private First Class." Kyle IT Support Davis cackled from behind his laptop. "I just sent an automated email to every employee in their government. Their new mandatory workplace policies are going into effect immediately." O'Connor leaned forward. "Give me the highlights." Davis grinned. "For starters, all Galactic Bureau employees are now required to attend a 2-hour daily seminar on embracing change in the workplace. We've also instituted a strict no meetings without snacks policy, which means they legally cannot convene their Supreme Council until they locate an intergalactic snack supplier." Rodriguez snorted. "Their entire legislative process just collapsed because they don't have a supplier for gluten-free muffins." Davis wasn't finished. "Oh, and their flagship dreadnought, the Indomitable Compliance, is currently locked out of its own navigation system because their captains refused to accept the latest terms of service update." O'Connor laughed. "How long until they cave?" Rodriguez smirked. "Any minute now." Back at the Galactic Bureau, Zargathor sat in his office, glaring at the screen in front of him. It was a PowerPoint presentation. Title: "So You've Just Been Hostilely Acquired, a Leadership Survival Guide." The first slide had a big, bold title: "You Brought This on Yourself." Zargathor clenched his teeth as the automated voice narration began. Slide 1. Recognizing your mistakes. You might be wondering how you, a supreme director of an intergalactic bureaucracy, got out-bureaucratized by a species that still argues about pineapple on pizza. The answer is simple. You underestimated the weaponized inefficiency of human regulatory systems. Zargathor pounded his fist against his desk. I will not stand for this. Vice Chairman Plorb hesitated. Sir, technically, you no longer have the authority to make that decision. Zargathor froze. Explain. Plorb coughed. As per the latest human-implemented workplace guidelines, all major executive decisions must now be approved by the newly appointed Chief Compliance Officer of Galactic Affairs. Zargathor's blood pressure spiked. WHHU! Plorb tapped his tablet and displayed a live feed of their new overlord. A human woman appeared on the screen. She had cold, calculating eyes, a color-coded filing system behind her, and the merciless efficiency of someone who had spent decades managing corporate expense reports. Her nameplate read, Janet from Accounting. Zargathor felt his soul leave his body. Janet adjusted her glasses and spoke in a voice that could make accountants weep. Lord Zargathor, I see you're behind schedule on submitting your quarterly compliance review. Zargathor's mouth went dry. Janet held up a red-stamped document. We cannot proceed with any operations, including planetary governance, until this form is completed in triplicate. I expect it on my desk within the hour. Zargathor choked. You can't do this. Janet adjusted her glasses again. I can, and I have. Zargathor felt true terror. Not the fear of death, not the fear of war, but something far worse. The fear of having to file overdue paperwork for a woman who knew exactly where every missing decimal point was. Back on Earth, the war room erupted in cheers. Rodriguez high-fived. Davis. Janet broke him. O'Connor smirked. Of course she did. You think a supreme director can stand up to someone who once audited an entire multinational corporation into bankruptcy over unfiled receipts? Davis laughed. What happens next? O'Connor leaned back. Next, we dismantle the Galactic. Bureau 1 redundant policy at a time. Rodriguez grinned. And if they resist? O'Connor sipped his coffee. Then we introduce Phase 4. Davis raised an eyebrow. And what's Phase 4? O'Connor's grin widened. Hold music. The war room fell silent. Rodriguez whispered in awe. You madman. O'Connor chuckled. You think a bureaucratic empire can survive 72 hours of looping elevator jazz? Davis shuddered. Sir, with all due respect, that's inhumane. O'Connor simply smiled. The Galactic Bureau was finished. It just didn't know it yet. Lord Zargathor Bureaucratius IV sat in his once mighty throne, now surrounded by an ever-growing mountain of paperwork. His hands trembled as he held the latest mandatory workplace evaluation report, stamped in red ink, demanding an immediate response. It had been 72 hours since humanity had activated its final weapon. Hold music. Not just any hold music, but a relentless, soul-crushing loop of corporate-friendly jazz, specifically engineered to induce a state of helpless compliance. The Galactic Bureau of Supreme Management was collapsing from the inside. Vice Chairman Plorb stumbled into the throne room, his eyes bloodshot, his tentacle-like fingers twitching from lack of sleep. Sir, we can't take it anymore. The music won't stop. Zargathor gritted his teeth. We are a proud empire, Plorb. We will not surrender to... A voice chimed through the overhead speakers. Your call is very important. To us. Please stay on the line for the next available representative. A smooth saxophone riff followed. Soft, never-ending, insufferable. Plorb screamed. Zargathor's claws dug into his armrests. We can survive this, he muttered. We just have to. Another voice broke through the speakers. It was Janet from Accounting. Attention, Galactic Bureau employees. Her voice unfeeling, merciless, absolute. Your Quarterly compliance. Training seminar has been scheduled. Attendance is mandatory. Plorb fell to his knees. Sir, they're making us attend another training session. His voice cracked. I can't sit through another video on cultivating a positive intergalactic work environment. I just can't. Zargathor's breathing grew ragged. We are the most efficient bureaucratic system in the galaxy. We enforce regulations. We do not. The hold music shifted. The tempo slowed. A new voice, one more sinister than the last, slithered through the speakers. Have you considered switching to a paperless workplace? Zargathor's entire body locked up. Plorb's mouth opened, but no sound came out. A whisper ran through the Galactic Bureau's halls. Paperless. The word dripped with horror, an abomination to an empire that had spent millennia crafting the most bloated, complicated, physically redundant paperwork system in the galaxy. A single, treasonous thought entered Zargathor's mind. What if they were right? What if their bureaucracy was outdated? What if the humans weren't just destroying them? What if they were streamlining them? Zargathor shook his head violently, trying to banish the thoughts. No. No. This was a psychological attack. A dirty, underhanded corporate efficiency maneuver. But the whispers were spreading. From the lower offices of intergalactic budgetary appropriations to the central compliance committees, alien bureaucrats were starting to ask questions. Do we really need 16 copies of every form? Do meetings need to last 5 hours? What happens if we don't follow Protocol 877Q for filing a request to file a request? The very foundation of the Galactic Bureau was crumbling. Zargathor stood, desperate to regain control. Silence! We will not abandon the ways of our ancestors. We will resist these human reforms until our final breath. The doors to the Supreme Council chamber slammed open. Janet from accounting stood at the entrance, a clipboard in hand, a calculating gleam in her eyes. Zargathor froze. She stepped forward, methodical, unstoppable. Lord Zargathor, she said, her voice neutral, emotionless. It is time for your annual performance review. Zargathor collapsed back into his chair. No, he whispered. Yes, Janet replied. Plorb wept openly. Janet flipped to the first page of her report. Based on the latest performance metrics, your leadership efficiency rating has dropped to 18%. Zargathor's breathing hitched. That's impossible. Janet adjusted her glasses. The data does not lie. She flipped the page. Additionally, employee satisfaction has plummeted to 3 out of 10. Zargathor gasped. No! That's just a small dip. It's a temporary fluctuation. A statistical error, Janet continued. Furthermore, according to the latest workforce analytics, there has been a 45% increase in regulatory inefficiencies. Zargathor clutched his chest. And, Janet concluded, based on these figures, we have no choice but to restructure leadership. Effective immediately, Zargathor screamed. You can't do this, he roared. I am Lord Zargathor, Supreme Director of... A new notification flashed on his desk console. Notice of termination. Effective immediately. Reason: non-compliance. With updated efficiency standards, Zargathor froze. He had been fired from his own empire. Janet extended a clipboard. Please sign here to acknowledge receipt of your termination notice. Zargathor's claws trembled. I refuse. Janet clicked a pen. I can wait. Silence. The hold music looped again. Zargathor's hand shook as he took the pen. He tried to resist. He tried to hold onto his power, but no one defied Janet from accounting. With a shaky signature, Zargathor signed himself out of existence. Janet nodded in approval. Thank you. Please submit any remaining documents to your new supervisor. Zargathor blinked. My new supervisor. A door opened. Blorbo, the filing clerk, shuffled in, holding a stack of files. Hello, Junior Administrative Intern Zargathor. Zargathor's soul left his body. Back on Earth, the war room erupted into cheers. O'Connor stood at the head of the table, arms crossed, watching the Galactic Bureau collapse under the weight of its own bureaucracy. Rodriguez grinned. Sir, we did it. The Bureau is officially under full human control. Davis spun in his chair. Not just that. We've streamlined their processes, eliminated redundancies, and even converted half their workforce into remote employees. Rodriguez smirked. Meaning? Davis grinned. Meaning they're all working for us now. O'Connor chuckled. Perfect. What's the next phase? Davis tapped his screen. Well, now that we control the largest bureaucracy in the galaxy, Rodriguez's eyes widened. Oh my God. O'Connor's smile widened. We tax the galaxy. Silence, Rodriguez whispered. Sir, that's evil. O'Connor sipped his coffee. It's not evil. He turned toward the massive, gleaming star map. It's just good business.